I'm Harlan Carroll, and I've been a member of Lakeside for 20-some years, and this would be my semi-life story. I enjoyed making this podcast.
Been involved in the church and in the community for quite a long time. So, Harlan, welcome. We're glad you're with us.
Thank you.
We hope that you are able to share a bit of your background and your story. And so tell us where you were born, where you grew up, and a little bit about that part of the story.
Well, I was born in East Tennessee, in Greenville, Tennessee. My dad was a dime store manager and for Woolworths, and he got transferred around. So my sister was the first one. She was born here, but Mom had to come here to have her because they were stationed in Gastonia, North Carolina at that point. And then they moved to Tennessee, and my older brother and I were both born there. Then we moved to East North Carolina. Another brother was born there. And we moved to Eastern Kentucky, where another brother was born. So the five of us. And the youngest was born in 41 in Pikeville, Kentucky. It's been in the news, you might have seen it. It got flooded again.
Right.
And we lived there from 39 to 45, 1939. Right. And when the war was still going on, but not over, we came down by train from Pikeville to West Palm Beach because my dad was tired of being moved around, and this was home for both families, the Carrolls and the Gates, my mother's family. And they had met here, and Mother had gone to school here. Dad came in from Indiana as one of the Yankees to come down. And they met, Mom and Dad, at the beach.
Here?
I think, yes, Palm Beach.
Okay.
On the beach. And eventually married. And we were the product of that marriage. But my time, I turned 9 just after we arrived in West Palm Beach. But my mother and her family arrived here in 1910. So they sort of qualify as pioneers of West Palm Beach.
So tell us a little about where they came from and how that all transpired.
They came from Kalispell, Montana. It's interesting, in Mom's graduation yearbook from Palm Beach High, all the characters in the high school were listed by name and where they came from. Every senior had where they were, and there probably weren't a dozen that were from West Palm Beach or even Florida.
All from
Most
somewhere
were
else.
from somewhere else.
Oh my.
And that was 1926. But the family got here in 1910. They sort of hit hard times in 1913 when my grandfather died.
Oh, yeah.
And at that time, women didn't have any rights, basically. And so whatever he had disappeared, except for the home where the family lived. And that was on L Street, which is no longer here. It's under the convention center now. But they had a nice home up on L Street. And that was her family. My dad's family were sort of migrants, so to speak. They would come down in the summertime because my granddad was a house painter.
Where'd they hail from?
Indiana.
Indiana.
Okay. The Carroll family that came through Ohio, I don't know exactly where they originated in the scheme of things, but he was cousin with several people in northern Indiana. My grandfather was up there, and they lived in Cincinnati, my grandparents.
Okay.
And they would make that trip in the mid-20s by car to South Florida, where he would work as a painter, and then go back in the summertime to go. I mean, they spent the winters here, and the summers in Ohio, where he could work.
So you keep working both.
So you work both places, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And they bought a house on Garden Avenue in southern West Palm Beach in 1924, I think. And that the family stayed in that house until 1988.
Wow.
When Mom and Dad moved into a condo here.
Pre-Depression era.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mom and Dad were in the dime store business during the Depression.
Oh.
So at least he had work.
Yeah. Yeah. He had work.
Kept us sheltered and fed and clothed, and that was about all we could expect.
Right. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So you were down here, as we talked before, pre-air conditioning.
Oh, definitely. We had windows open. That was our air conditioning.
Yeah.
And we, on Garden Avenue, which is a couple of miles from the ocean, we still got a bit of breeze. So you leave all the windows open, you stayed fairly comfortable.
You're okay.
And you didn't know you didn't have air conditioning because it just wasn't around. You might have it in theaters and large buildings, but nothing in most homes.
Mm-hmm.
So and our heat was one fireplace.
Well, maybe you didn't need too much then. Now you said your grandfather, when we were talking before, was involved in the church. Your mother's side,
right?
Or those folks. How about what kind of church orientation or faith background were?
That was Methodist, and when my grandparents, Carroll, settled on Garden Avenue, the Wag Memorial Methodist Church was just a block up the street.
Okay.
So
convenient. That's
where we went.
Okay.
And everybody from the family went to Wag Memorial Methodist Church. A couple of my aunts and my family and my dad's brother and his family, who lived across the street from us, all belonged to Wag Church. So that's where we got our education and induction into the church.
Now you went to what high school?
Palm Beach High School.
Palm Beach High School. And you took a trip with your brothers?
I did. 1950. I call that my coming out summer.
Uh-huh.
I had a trip to Valley Forge, Pennsylvania for the Boy Scout National Jamboree.
Uh-huh.
And after that, came home and we took our 34 Chevy that had been the family car, and Dad had bought a 40 Plymouth, I think. This is 1950. He bought a 40 Plymouth as the family car, so this old Chevy was in the backyard, and we decided that we would make that into our car. So we took the fenders all off. We cut the body behind the back of the front seats, took that all off, built ourselves a wooden cover pickup bed, basically, on the back of this, covered up, enclosed, put a little back window panel up in the back of the car, and left enough of the fender brace up front to attach the headlights to. And we decided we were going to take a trip that summer.
Now, how many of you were on this venture?
3.
Okay.
My older brother was 16, my cousin was 15, and I was 14. And I had a learner's permit. I think David, our cousin, he might have had a learner's permit too, but Kenneth had a license because he had turned 16 in August. And August is when we took our trip. So we decided we would drive to Miami or to Indiana and work on the farms up there to make a little money to get us back home. But we had to be home by Labor Day because school started the next day.
Right.
So we were probably, I don't even know the dates we were gone, but we mid-August. We had taken the engine and dropped the pan, tightened the, you could take shims out of the rod caps and tighten the bearings a little bit. So we did that to the engine. It still ran, even after we got through. And we packed up with our 3 jungle hammocks, our whatever clothes we thought we might want. And we had a bayonet in a sheath, a large machete, and we had borrowed my uncle's .22 rifle, but he and Dad caught us in Jupiter and took that away. So we didn't have that.
They were going to let God go.
But we left, started driving north, got to Vero Beach.
Now this was about, when did you leave? You had to be back by
Mid-August.
Labor Day. Well, mid-August.
A couple of 3 weeks before Labor Day.
Okay.
So we got up there and we started to overheat. Something happened to the engine, and we knew we had a problem, and we took the head off. I mean, we've got tools. We took the head off, and the head gasket had blown. So we called home, and Uncle Arthur happened to have one in his garage. He and Dad brought it to Vero. We put it on, not they, we, and buttoned it back up. But knowing that we had displaced everything, we decided we needed to adjust the valves. So there was a machine, auto repair shop across the street.
Mm-hmm.
We were parked at a Texaco station, I think. And we walked over there and asked them if they would adjust the valves for us. Well, here's 3 dirty boys, and they don't want to deal with us. So they said, no, we can't do that. We don't have time. So I went to one of the mechanics. I said, what are the settings for those valves? He told me. We had all we needed. We went over and reset them ourselves, got it running, put it back together, and took off up the highway. We made it up into Georgia, and the sheriff came along and stopped us just out in the middle of nowhere. We were just cruising along. He says, you know how fast you were going, boy? And my brother said, I think it was about 60 miles an hour, sir. That's right. And that was too damn fast for a good car. We of course were incensed.
Yeah, you thought you had perfect wheels.
Right. But anyway, he walked around the car looking at it, shaking his head. He let us go, and we drove on up, headed for Indiana, and passed through near Atlanta. Might have even been Atlanta, I don't remember. But got on up into Tennessee and passed through there. But every night we would stop beside the road, and we'd take our jungle hammocks and sling them in the trees right there, 50 feet of the road, build a little fire. Of course, we were Boy Scouts, so we knew to clear everything off and make a little fire and use it for what we needed and make sure it was out. So we did that every night, and just sleep in our jungle hammocks. And nobody ever bothered us. It was all 2-lane. As a matter of fact, I was asking somebody the other day if they remembered the road signs that were birds. Back in the 20s and 30s, the highways were designated, the north-south highways, I don't know about east and west, but north-south highways were designated by a picture of a bird, a cardinal, a bluebird, a mockingbird, whatever, several
Oh my.
different, and if you followed those birds, you got to where they led. It was simple as that. No numbers, no nothing. It was just
Follow the birds.
follow the birds. Well, we saw some of those in this trip, but we got up into Kentucky, and that we'd driven. I think my brother had driven most of the night. We didn't stop anywhere, and we were coming down a hill, and there was a railroad going across above us. So we went under it, and the road turned right under it, so you didn't see anything past it. Well, we got down to just past it, through it, and turned, and there was a pickup truck stopped waiting for a car to come across a one-lane bridge. Well, we didn't quite get stopped with our two-wheel brakes, which were mechanical and not hydraulic. And we bumped back bumper just gently, but enough to push the radiator back a little bit and broke the nozzle on the bottom. So all the water leaked out. So we took the radiator out, hitchhiked around to found a shop that would solder the nozzle back in the base. They did. We hitchhiked back to our car, which was right beside a little creek, and there was a house at that point. So we put the radiator back in, but as it went in, it bumped something and it cracked that joint again. So we had to punt. We grabbed some jugs and filled them with water and filled up the radiator and took off. And we made it to Winchester, Kentucky, just outside of it. And we didn't get enough water in soon enough, and it just burnt the engine up, basically. It quit, overheated, and ruined it. So here we are, 3 boys, no assets except what's in the car, and a few dollars, not many. And we got a tow into Winchester, and they put us beside a Hudson dealership, his shop in the back. He had a large parking area with old cars and trucks up there. So we got there, and we, of course, wired home and said, help.
We're in trouble.
Find all the money that the 3 of us have, wherever it might be, and send it to us. So they wired us $50. I don't know how much it was, but it wasn't a lot. And the owner of the Hudson dealership said his father-in-law had a 33 Chevy Coupe that he might trade with us. Okay, we could do that. So we went out and looked at it, and sure enough, it's pretty good shape, and it ran. He had it on blocks. So we said, we'll do that. Well, while we were staying there beside this Hudson dealer, we were sleeping in the back of a box truck that had no door on the back. And I woke up one morning before my brother and cousin, and I looked out, and there's some guy down at the door, down at our car, just kind of nosing through our stuff. Well, I didn't say anything, and I just left him alone for that. But the only thing he came out with was my only pair of shoes.
Oh, jeez.
He's not taking my shoes. I grabbed the machete and jumped out of that truck. I said, you better put those back. And he looked at me and, okay. He put them back in the car, and he picked up a fan belt for protection and took off around the front of the building. But at least we had something I could use to intimidate.
Right.
Not that I knew I'd use it, but they were my only shoes. I mean, come on.
Yeah. What do you do without them?
That's right. So anyway, we got that 33 Chevy and we took off. It used oil. I don't know where it went, but never had enough oil in it. So we got us a 5-gallon can and would fill it from service station used oil can barrels.
Oh my goodness.
And we just pour it in because it was gone the next time we thought about it. So we got all the way up to our destination near Wayne, Indiana.
Now, was this destination a family member, or
We
why
had
did you choose
2 or
that?
3 cousins who owned farms,
Ah, okay.
and we had no experience on farms, of course, except for a visit or two
Mm-hmm.
before this time by our families to these families. And we got there and we were going to stay with the Pribbles. So our cousin, his dad's cousin, who was named Pribble, and we when we pulled in, Edith, the wife, would not let us in the house until we bathed outside in the yard. We hadn't been in water since we left West Palm Beach.
Wow, she was a little self-protection.
Says, yeah, you're not coming in here till you're clean. So we got clean, and we had probably a week there, and good visit. Weekend, they took us off to a lake, and had a little pier on it. Oh, good, we can go swimming. I went and dove in that lake, and about froze. I mean, I was not used to 50 degree, 60 degree water temperature. I was used to
Sure.
the 80.
Yeah.
But we had a good time up there, and we worked there, made silage. They had a hailstorm that beat up a bunch of cornfields.
Uh-huh.
So we made silage and put that in the silos, and they had so much that it filled the silo, and we had to make some temporary silos out of wire fencing.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had some new piglets running around the yard, back the farmyard. And while we were making the silage, and they had a long conveyor that took it to the lift conveyor, while we were making this silage, it would a little bit fall off along the edges of the conveyor. Well, these piglets would go in there and chow down on this corn. Well, after a couple of days of that, it got a little fermented, and the little piglets got a little drunk. And it was fun to watch them wander around,
Huh?
not knowing what was going on. But we made some money doing that, and they had some other baled a little hay and made some money there. So finally had enough to begin our trip back to Florida. We took off one morning to come back, got down through Indiana and Kentucky, spent the night in the woods, and went on down, got into North Georgia. And the engine started knocking.
Uh-oh.
Just as we'd gotten out of the mountains of North Georgia, just above Atlanta, we were crossing Altoona Lake, I guess they call it now, the reservoir, the name of it then, Altoona Reservoir. But David and I had to get out and push the car to get it off because Kenneth turned it off. We were done, as far as the car was concerned at that time. So David and I kept it rolling, pushed it off the causeway, and there was a nice swale. We went down and straddled that, so we'd have some room to get under it, take the pan off, work on it. But it was beautiful. Here's this gorgeous lake, big pine trees, it was just a beautiful place to camp. And we had water. We could go in and even bathe. So we stayed there. We took the pan down and found that one of the rod caps had come loose. One bolt was out and another was bent. So it was just hanging and banging there on the crankshaft. So we took took it apart. Well, let's go see if we can find any parts to put this back together with. So we went, hitchhiked around the area, dealerships, junkyards, you name it, we tried. Nobody had parts for a 33 Chevy.
Wow.
17 years old, nobody, not even dealers, nothing. There was a 1-year make on the engine apparently, and so we just had no recourse but to fix it. So we took the bent bolt, straightened it out, and I'm the one that suggested these things. And I'm 14, but I'm the mechanic. I suggested we straighten the bolts out, put the thing back together, and just tighten them down tight as they'll go so it doesn't come out again, you know. So we did that, buttoned it up, poured some of our used oil in, and cranked it up, and it ran quietly. So, oh, good. We took off. We're in North Georgia at that time, in Atlanta. We got down to about Valdosta, and it started banging again, knocking. Well, we know what this is. That's not a problem. We just fix it.
Tighten them up again.
So we dropped the pan, and oops, there's pieces of piston in it this time. So we took it apart, made the rounds. Nobody had parts, couldn't do anything for it. So I said, I wonder if it'll run on 5. We just take this one all out, piston rod, pieces, everything out, take the plug out or loose, just take it loose, take the wire loose, see how it works. Well, it cranked up and it ran, but it shook you like crazy. Well, we had no choice. There's no way to fix it. So we start out again. We get into North Florida and stop for lunch, come back out. My brother pushes the button to start the car, and the starter motor just hums. It doesn't engage anything.
Oh, boy.
Just, you hear this hum from the motor running. Lifted the hood. The starter's hanging about like this on the engine. The top bolt is gone and the bottom one is going. So I said, let's take the bottom bolt and put it in the top. Let the weight of the starter hold it down. Maybe that'll be enough to get it to crank the car. Well, it did. So we start up, head down the road. Of course, we cranked on pretty hard on that bolt to make sure we still had a starter next time. So we're going down the highway up around Titusville or somewhere, and we smell smoke, electrical smoke. And we didn't know where it was from, so we pulled off the road, opened the hood, and the starter the generator was running like a motor. A generator and a motor are 2 different setups inside. Well, to run like a motor, it had to fail as a generator. And it did. And it was drawing so much current out of our battery that the wire that was the size of my finger that connected the generator to the battery just went melted in the middle. So now we have no generator. And my brother and his cousin are wondering, how are we going to get this home now? I said, well, it doesn't have to have the generator to run. As long as the battery's got a charge, it'll make the spark. That's all we need, just enough to run the starter one time. And then, so, okay, well, we did. It started up, ran. All right, we headed on down the road, but it's getting late. And I said, we can't run any lights.
Yeah.
That's not going to work, because that'll drain the battery and then we're dead. So we just tucked in behind semis and let them be our lights. Followed semis all the way from wherever, somewhere up there around Daytona, maybe Melbourne, I don't know, all the way to West Palm Beach.
And you made it.
We made it. drove into my uncle's driveway, which was across the street from our house. At about 6:30 in the morning, the light, it had gotten light. Parked the car, and it never ran again.
The miracle trip.
It never
The
ran.
miracle trip. Wow. Amazing that you made it.
But we made it. We
You
went
made
to
it
school Monday
Oh
or
my gosh,
Tuesday.
you made it there and back. Isn't that amazing? Wow. Well, that's quite a story. That was very, I'm sure, kind of set the stage for so much of the rest of your life. I mean, you had a
Well,
story to talk about every time you got together. Do you
at,
remember when?
at 16, I became a machine sweeper and cleaner in a machine shop. At 19, I was running all the machines,
Wow.
able to, and did. I always rebuilt engines on my Whizzer motorbike that I had, delivering papers. I worked on car engines all the time. And once I got out of high school, I thought about going to college, but I didn't. I treated junior college just like high school, and decided that I wasn't performing up to what I knew I could do, and that I was getting no more out of it than I was putting into it. So I said, well, I think I'll bail on the college and go in the Air Force or go in the service. I was in the Marine Reserve from June that year, 54, to January 55, but I was inducted into the Air Force in 55. So the Marines discharged me, and the Air Force took me on for 4 years. And after that, I was in, they wouldn't let me become a jet engine mechanic, which is what I wanted. I wanted that. But they said, no, your test scores are too good. We need people in security service. But I don't know anything about that. I don't want to do that. I want to be a jet engine. No, you can't be a jet engine mechanic. We can teach anybody to do that.
Oh, gee.
I said, well, maybe I don't ever want to fly on one.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
But that was coercion number one, I guess. You know, you either do what they want you to, or you're put into the air police or something that you really don't want to do. You know, so I took them up on it. After basic, they sent me to Kelly Air Force Base for a pre-language school to determine. When they told me I needed to become a linguist, I said, I barely made it through high school English. Why? How can you think I can learn a language? Well, we'll check. We've got a process we can put you through to determine whether you have an aptitude, can do it. So over at Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, they put us through this school. And if we passed, we were then assigned to a language school. And I got assigned to Monterey, California Army Language School, Presidio of Monterey, and was taught Russian.
Russian, wow.
And worked at that for the rest of my time in the Air Force. I was married while I was in that school. So when I got shipped to England, we brought my wife over to England, and we, in our new little 56 Volkswagen, we lived in England while I worked for the Air Force. First son was born there in 58. We came home, and I got discharged in 59, went back to junior college under the GI Bill, and graduated from the University of Florida with a mechanical engineering degree.
Well, there you go. Well, now, that was during the Cold War. Was
Oh,
that
yeah.
You knew Russian.
Oh, yeah,
So you were kind of in the middle of a lot of that
exactly.
interesting time. Wow.
Yeah, we listened to a lot of aircraft traffic. That's what we were primarily assigned to.
Now, when you got back, did you jump back into the Methodist church, or?
I did.
Yeah.
That was our church, WAG. We lived here, you know, going to college at Palm Beach Junior College. So we I graduated in May of '63 from the University of Florida at the age of 27 because of service in college.
Right.
It took me a little longer than most, but went up to Nashville, spent 4 years there. I had a son born in England, and then I had a graduation present born in Gainesville the month I graduated. And then the youngest was born in Nashville. But I worked for DuPont in their fiber producing Dacron product plant, and as a mechanical engineer, process design, actually project engineering was my field. So I would design various requirements for the company and see that they were built properly.
Right.
Then I decided I had an offer from another fiber company that made nylon over in Greenville, South Carolina. And so for another $1,000 a year, I went over there.
Yeah.
And you gotta remember it was a lesser paid time. I did come out of college because of my experience in manufacturing or machine shop experience and service experience. They did pay me more than most guys that were graduating fresh from high school. Yeah, so I was doing all right, and I got a raise and went over to Greenville. Spent 8 years there, and this company was partially owned, half owned by Celanese and half by, I think it was ICI, of Imperial Chemical Industries from England. So we had some Englishmen there, and anyway, I worked in project engineering there and designed the biggest project they'd had internally in the plant, and made sure it got built properly. And not long after that, I got called by the corporate safety office from Celanese, which was the company that owned half of Fiber Industries that I worked for. And I went up to interview there, and the director of health and safety and environmental stuff for Celanese wanted me to be a process safety engineer, which meant that I was to go wherever a process was being designed or modified or investigated because of a failure or whatever. I would be involved. I would have to go to any of the plants. When they had a new project, I would go and help them analyze it from a safety and loss prevention perspective. And I did that for 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
Between Celanese and Cyril Pharmaceutical, because I was with Celanese they transferred me to New Jersey in '82, and because my son was in high school, youngest son was still in high school, I didn't go. I said, I'll work with him, but I'm living here until he graduates high school. So I did that, and when I was up there 2 years after I got up there, well, the corporation was selling itself to anybody, and Herx from Germany bought it. Well, while they were preparing to sell themselves, they pared down their head count, which I was one of. And I got the job with Cyril Pharmaceutical, doing basically the same sort of thing, preaching safe operations to the plants and helping investigate anything that went wrong. And that lasted another 8 or 9 years, I guess, 10. And when I was 60, they decided it was time for me to retire because they were taking our department and taking it off. Monsanto had bought the company. Mm-hmm. And they took our department off to St. Louis and didn't want all the head count. So there again, I got offered a buyout package.
Out again.
I said, throw me in the briar patch. So I took the buyout, stayed there in Chicago for another year. But in the meantime, I would drive to South Carolina once a month. A friend of mine had a business called Forensic Engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and I went down there, did a job or two for him every month, and decided, I like this. You know, this is like I was doing in industry, only
Right.
for lawyers and insurance companies and anybody
Mhm.
that needs something investigated. So I decided, well, I'm not retiring in Chicago. Too cold, too
Yeah.
cold. So I moved us down to South Carolina and worked at that for about 5 or 6 years until I finally said, well, I'm going to hang it up. I let my professional engineer's license lapse so nobody could call me and ask for advice and help. You know, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So then that's when I was looking for coming down here in 2002, and been back and forth from here to Charlotte ever since.
Now you've spent some time, I believe I understand, working for people who are disabled and need a way to get in and out of their residence.
In Charlotte, at our church, we were socializing. I heard one of our acquaintances talking to a friend who was also an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking, the acquaintance worked with a company called Love in the Name of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
Love Inc. And he was talking to my friend, engineer friend, about coming on board to build ramps for disabled people.
Right.
And Jim wasn't all that interested in jumping in on as a lead builder, I guess you'd call it. But I didn't have any sense, so I said, hey, I've had to build ramps for my youngest son who's in a wheelchair. I've done half a dozen or a dozen of those things. Oh, really? So redirected his attention to me. And I went to work building with other lead builders that they had and already had. Love in the name of Christ. Yeah, Love Inc.
Okay.
In Christ, in the name of Christ. Anyway, and they are apparently a franchised deal, because if you look them up, they might be still on the web. Yeah, because I did, and they had other locations besides Charlotte. But I got to where I was a lead builder, and I had half a dozen old guys like I was that I could call on to help, and we'd load up the gear, and I would go measure the elevation and see how much ramp was needed and so forth. And the friend that drafted me, he was a lawyer, and he worked with them to vet people who applied to make sure they were in need,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't afford to buy the materials or hire a contractor and that sort of thing. And once it was determined they were needy, and they had people that donated a lot to them. And so I would go make a design, give them the materials list that I came up with. They bought it and had it shipped to the site. And I got my guys together and got my tools in my truck and little trailer, and went off and built ramps. And by the time I was 80, I told them, I think I'll stop when I'm about 80. And I got to 99. I thought, well, either 100 ramps or 80 years old. Well, I guess they took me seriously because they never called me after the 99th.
Oh, the 99th. So that was the end of it. Well, that's a perfect
But
example of this particular sense of what we're trying to talk about, and the name of this is elevation.
that's right.
Now, when you do that, the ramp can't be too steep, can it?
No, you
got a certain,
have to have a certain, depending on the type of mobility they have.
Right.
If they're managing their own wheelchair, it can't be higher than 1 inch rise per foot of travel.
Oh, I see.
So that dictates the ramp.
Okay.
And then if you've got a powered chair, then it can be a little steeper.
Yeah.
But I was pretty much the expert there for a while.
Wow. Well,
But
that's a great.
as you say, that some people would try to pay me. And I would say, no, my pay is your thanks. I do not need to be paid. I said, this is my volunteer. So that's what I did. We were fairly active. I was always singing in the choir wherever I was.
Yeah.
And well, both of us sang. And we went, in fact, we were married at WAG in December of '55. So that was a long time ago.
That was quite a while ago, yeah. A couple of years anyhow. Now, you ended up as a Presbyterian. How did that happen? What?
Well, later in life, I was divorced. And when I met Nancy, she was Presbyterian. And I thought, well, I'm not going anywhere at the moment. I'll go with her.
You weren't dyed in the wool.
No.
Nothing. So.
No.
So we got you over here.
I'm enough. I have enough intelligence or inquisitiveness to know that it's all Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you believe, it doesn't matter where you are, where you go.
Right.
That's the important thing.
Right.
And if you can make a difference with where you are and what you do.
Now, was it Lakeside your first stop?
As a Presbyterian, or was it?
No, we started in Charlotte,
Oh,
North Carolina.
okay.
That's where we re-met. We
Uh-huh.
worked together,
Yeah.
but we re-met when I was divorced and her husband had died. And I was looking for a place to stay up there.
Mhm.
And she happened to have an apartment that was for rent, so I rented it. And we got together. The rest is history.
Yeah.
But she had canvassed the area of Presbyterian churches around South Charlotte and discovered that First Presbyterian uptown was the one that suited her the best.
Yeah.
And so when we got together, she was there and I started going up there. And the choir was 30, 35 people.
Good.
And,
Wow.
Good choir.
Yeah.
So she invited me to come along, and I auditioned for the choir director, and he allowed us how I might fit in. And
Okay. Yeah.
so that was how I got there, and we've been singing there ever since. And when we got together, I had the condo here because that's where I was going to retire to after I closed my business in Charlotte or in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So I had bought this place, the condo here, from my family, my brothers, when Mom died, and was prepared to come down here by myself and retire here.
You're home.
But didn't turn out that way. We had two places, and the two of us, and that was her place and this was my place, so we split our times 6 months each each place. Well, when we got here, I had a cousin who was looking for a church also. So we tried Lakeside, and we liked it. Been here ever since.
Now, how long ago?
2002 or 3,
Okay.
somewhere around
Was
there.
Bob Collins the pastor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. That was, we've been in the choir ever since when we're here, and in that choir when we're there.
Right.
And then Beverly.
Our
ended up-
daughter Beverly,
Yeah.
Nancy's daughter, became an ordained Presbyterian minister in about 2000. Worked in the mountains of North Carolina for a while, and was between churches when we needed an interim here.
Mhm.
So I was her agent. I bent a few elbows and arms and twisted a few arms to get her interviewed, and they liked her. So
So
she was our interim for a couple of years.
So that was kind of even
That
more
was-
cementing of your
Right.
connection.
To here, yes.
Yeah, great.
And she did not like the heat of the summer.
Well, it's rough on everybody.
So that might explain why she's now got a church in central Minnesota.
Isn't that interesting that your mother's side of the family started out in Montana, and now up back into that area is your
Daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a few more quick things to ask you. A little bit
Yeah.
more about your time in the military, if that was
Well,
an enriching experience, or what you thought about that.
I endured it. I didn't enjoy it in particular. You know, it was something I had to do to get through and qualify for my GI Bill.
You had other
Because, yeah, I did not have to stay in the service. I did not have to do anything. I had the options when I got out
okay,
to
That was
do
your goal.
something else.
that was your focus.
So I had taken some overseas courses from the University of Maryland and had about 22 hours of coursework done. So Palm Beach Junior College credited me with the first semester of my plan. So I had 3 semesters there that got me prepared for University of Florida. And then it was 3 more years there because they required 5 years to get an engineering degree.
Now, here's another thought for you to ponder. What would you consider the most challenging thing you've experienced in your life? Your biggest challenge?
Marriage.
Marriage. Yeah. Yeah, it can be a challenge for everybody.
It's a shame we can't get it right. Every one of us get it right the first time, but that's sometimes it doesn't work, and we have to move on.
That's right. What about the happiest time you could ever imagine? Would you say is your
The
happiest?
last 20 years
Last 20
with Nancy,
That's been good, huh? That's
been excellent.
yeah. Well, so what would you say your experience was the most life-changing experience you had as a young guy, when you were a young man growing up?
Life changing. I don't know. I felt like I was just kind of sliding along
You're on a track and you were
with
staying
whatever. Yeah. Well, I knew I was mechanically inclined, so that was obviously what I enjoyed doing.
Right.
And it didn't take me long to realize that was what my aim in life would be.
Mhm.
I could be a machinist. I could be a mechanic. I could go to school and be an engineer. So that's the one I chose. But that was probably the life-changing thing, was deciding to be educated
mechanical operations,
yeah.
and engineering. Yeah, I think it sounds like the military might have been able to hang on to you if they would have given you the jet engine
No,
mechanics. No, you wouldn't. Even that wouldn't.
because
have been
in 1958 or not 8, they were on the airlines. Jets were now on the airlines.
for you.
And I knew that when I went in, that it wouldn't be long, airlines would be flying them. There's Miami with a big airport.
That could be the
You
stuff.
know, I would come back,
Yeah.
live in West Palm or somewhere down the coast here and work and be a jet engine mechanic.
There you go.
I didn't have very high aspirations at that point.
All right.
But maybe the Air Force was good for me. And it was, because it settled me, focused me, got me realizing what I really wanted to do. That's what I did.
Advice? What advice would you offer to anyone who's moving forward in their life?
Oh my goodness. Listen.
Listen.
Yeah, don't be too quick to step on somebody's conversation or
Mm-hmm.
interest or knowledge, because you don't know it all.